Hey everyone, welcome back to Hipnovision Studios. Today I've got a very special topic for all of you. It is part psychology and part sex. And yes, fantasy and imagination is part of that. Today I want to talk about a writing that I posted as a video a little over 2 years ago. As you can see behind me, the cover of that is on the screen. I am taking away one of your senses. I want to dive into this a little bit deeper and really give some insights, not just from my point of view, but from consciousness itself and the human psyche and the conditions of sexual energy. Now, if you're a subscriber of my channel, thank you for coming back. If you're new, welcome. And I hope you find something here that you enjoy and that you like. Make sure you smash that subscribe button and check for the latest videos on this channel. Now, for the long-term watchers, I have talked about semen retention and celibacy. I've talked about personal magnetism and including all other sorts of magnetism for that matter. But today we are really going to dive into sensory input and why I wrote that writing to take away one of her senses. What does that mean? So as you can all imagine, it takes imagination to even have a fantasy, and we all do it on a day-to-day basis. Imagination has been a very big theme on this channel also. Well, as it turns out, we do indeed live in an electromagnetic universe. Only need to go back and look at the word imagination once more to see this. Magi, we could look at this through several viewpoints. Magic, magnify, to magnify the image in imagination and then project it outwardly as perception. So fantasy oftentimes starts in the brain. And as it turns out, the brain is the largest sexual organ in the human body. You only need to really think about this because when you look at how often, for example, a man or a woman thinks about sex during the day. But one thing is for sure, we all often fantasize and think about sexual acts. So fantasy is nothing more than daydreaming when the actions are not taken upon. Let me rephrase that. When we don't take action about something that we are daydreaming about, it is nothing more than a daydream. That is called fantasy. Some people live in a fantastical world, and it's all in imagination. But once you start to take action from imagination, fantasy becomes reality. It becomes real to me, meaning the first person view, as in you. It becomes real to you when you take action from that place. So when I wrote To Know Her, it was very symbolic, but it had a lot of deep innuendos embedded into it. And at the time, I really didn't even myself know just how deep this rabbit hole really was that I was opening up about. You see, putting myself out on YouTube in that way was almost an act of defiance, an act of expression and liberation of my own fantasies and my own imagination. That was 2 years ago, and I've been celibate and practicing semen retention the whole time since then. So, a lot of the videos that I have made around the topic has been what it has taught me, but most importantly, it has increased my imagination and the vividness of those said daydreams. I really want to point this out. Shared imagination is another part of this because if you can convey to an opposite gender person, let's say, in the image behind us is a man blindfolding a woman. The fantasy aspect of that is to take away one of her senses, meaning her physical eyesight. Now, here is the deep layers of this because it is indeed multi-layered. On the surface, taking away her eyes forces her to rely on the other senses. The anticipation of touch, the anticipation of, can I feel his closeness to me, his distance? You can really try this for yourself by closing your eyes and standing just a few feet away from the wall and take a few steps forward and then try to use your sensory input to gauge, are you about to walk into the wall or is there enough room between you that you need to take another step? This is a form of heightened sensory input. And when we think about sensory input, we do have five, and each one of those is a dimension. So we have five dimensions of sensory input, multi layer communication. The breath blowing across your skin, you don't know when it's going to happen, but it gives you goosebumps. The anticipation of that happening is something that is constantly playing in the mind. When is it going to happen? The suspense is starting to kill me. The other thing that I found when I started to write this and go down this rabbit hole was the other aspects of women, but not just women. I learned about the feminine aspect in general. You see, as it turns out, my channel name is called Hipnovision, and the reason for that is because my DJ name, DJ Hypnotic, and hypnosis, but also learning what it means to break a spell or to break the chains of generational curses, but to hypnotize oneself or to brainwash oneself. So, yes, a lot of times we all could live in some kind of fantasy in our mind, and we have this perception of the outside world that may be warped, may be delusional, but you can also reprogram your mind by taking conscious choices and making intentional choices. You can most definitely, no matter how old you are, change the direction of your life by conscious choice. So, this video that I made was a handwritten fantasy story that I had wrote and turned into a narration. But the feminine aspect, it taught me something very, very deeply. Um, Women in general, am I beautiful enough? Am I good enough? It really revolved around the fear that women have. In that video, in that writing, I wrote towards the end of it that she had to tell me that she believed that she was beautiful. And the reason for taking away her eyes as one of her senses was indeed to stop her from lying to herself. Why? Because most women will look in a mirror and see the reflection and then tell themselves that I'm not pretty, I'm not beautiful, I'm not sexually attractive. And it's hard for them to get into sexual energy, the arousal of life, the curiosity of life, the imaginative acts being played out as role play. Instead, we rely on our senses. I've said this many, many times on my channel. The number one most dominantly used sensory input is what we can see with our visual eyes. So when you take away that one sense, it forces you to rely on your others. So the context of this writing was to make her realize through imagination, through fantasy, and through her own inner energy that she was indeed beautiful, that she was indeed sexually attractive. The whole concept behind this was also to love yourself enough to give yourself what you deserve. And even I had to learn this for myself. I learned a lot about self love over the past few years on this channel. Indeed, it's been 2 years since I wrote that, but it was at the start of this channel when I started to post stuff up here that I released this video. And I'll be honest with you guys, at the time I wrote it, and even if you listen to it now, you can you can almost hear the timidness within me, meaning that the confidence of the words I was speaking, I was unsure of, but most definitely had experienced it in imagination. So, from the feminine aspect, we can look at this in many, many different ways. We could talk about the feminine, the actual female woman. We could talk about the feminine aspect that is within all of nature. We can talk about magnetism, where we look at the positive being male and the negative being female. And by negative, that means the inner state within all of us. You see, the feminine power is the creative power, it is where all of creativity comes from. Think about it like this: if you plant a seed into the soul, Mother Earth is going to grow whatever that seed is. The sunlight is going to pull that seed up out of the ground. the plant is going to grow towards the light. So sometimes you'll see plants kind of bend towards the light. The light is giving structure to what Mother Nature is growing, but it is coming from the darkness of the soul. The plant has to break through the soul in order to come out of below the ground to above the ground, as above, so below. So the inside of us, this is inside of our heads, is considered to be the dark shadow aspects of ourselves. Or we could look at this as the feminine aspect of the heart space, the creative power within that needs the physical body to carry out the actions through structure. The masculine aspects that we all have, even women have masculine aspects, and it's not really, it shouldn't be a derogatory thing. Now, when you look into society and you look out there, there's a lot that could be said. You have some women that are really, really masculine that are into other women. You have some men that are really feminized. They could be labeled many different things. And for the respect of anyone watching this, I won't repeat certain phrases. I don't want to offend anyone, but at the same time, I want to acknowledge that it exists. So I'll give you a perfect example. I don't mind using myself as that example. I am not one of those typical men. I don't care about football. I don't care about NASCAR. I don't care about sports in general. I love music. I love being creative. So I am a man who has always been deeply tapped into his feminine aspect, but not really like a feminine man. You get what I'm saying? I am a man who happens to really enjoy being creative with how I spend my time, the things that I find interesting in. So for me, I've always had a tough time bonding with other men. On the same token, I don't really get along really well with women that are more in a masculine type energy. And I don't mean butch like energy. I just mean the confidence aspect of things sometimes is abrasive. I don't really want a submissive woman. I don't really want a woman that's going to 100% all the time be dominating. But as a man, I do like a woman who can speak her mind and tell me and express her feelings, but also from time to time be able to have that confidence to take charge and initiate something. So to take away one of her senses and to put a blindfold onto her was to force her, not in a um, domineering type way, but to force her to rely on her other sensory input. And that was really revealing to why I even wrote it in the first place, because there was a feminine part of me that was speaking through that pen onto that paper of, do I love myself enough to do the things for me that I wish other people could do? Now, of course, when it comes to sexual energy, there are certain things that you cannot do for yourself. What does it mean to have a companion? What does it mean to be lustful, right? When you look at somebody and you look beyond their physical appearance and you see the contents of their imagination, the contents of their consciousness, there can be a lot of attraction there. However, if, it's been said that many men are just physical creatures. They use their eyeballs and they see what they see and they get turned on by it and they just want to have sex. I've never really been that type person. I do enjoy that shared vision of imagination and being able to kind of play things out. It is like practice, pretense, to pretend ahead of time before the event happens. You don't just go and perform a dance in front of a large crowd without practice beforehand. So, in many aspects of that, it really revealed to me different parts within myself that I was either unaware of or just really never paid much attention to. But the feminine aspect is within all of us. And that is one of the laws of the Hermetics. Everything has a masculine and a feminine principle to it. So I also want to point out to all of you out there that are watching a few studies and a few other viewpoints along this topic that are kind of fitting. Now, I will tell you, as someone who has practiced semen retention for um, a little over 3 years now, that to desexualize your mind, you start looking at people differently. And by that, I mean, you're not looking at women, for example, with lustful eyes. Actually, through this practice, I have found more arousal, not in just getting an erection, but to be aroused means to do something kind from your heart for someone else, even if there is no benefit physically from that. To help someone in a way is an arousal, but not in a sick, twisted way. I don't know how to explain that, but many of the older teachings, like Napoleon Hill, for example, talks about transmuting that energy. So that is a form of transmutation of sexual energy. So here we go, guys. I'm going to read from my iPad here. The feminine aspect in women and in men responds most strongly to feeling. Remember, feelings are magnetic and our thoughts are electric. And the way that we verify this is very simple. We know that electrical impulses fire around in the brain. Electrical impulses are indeed electric. That's why they say that thoughts are electric. Feelings are magnetic. Feelings are your heart space. What do you feel? How do you feel about something? But most importantly, you also have instinct, which is like that gut feeling or intuition, which is typically known as a feminine aspect. So in men and women, it responds most strongly to feeling, imagery, anticipation, and emotional texture. Not brute logic, but when you remove a sense by putting a blindfold over your eyes, for example, you aren't creating a sexual act. You are creating a canvas for the imagination to start to create from. When you put a blindfold on somebody, I'm really thinking here that that mind starts to wonder, like, what's going to happen? What am I about to experience? So the mind just starts to really start to paint all these different vivid pictures. Imagination begins to fill the gaps. The mind becomes a storyteller. The emotional body turns on. The subtle sensations become louder than the physical ones because of that anticipation. In 2017, Journal of Neuroscience, studies show that when visual input is removed, the brain relocates resources. The auditory cortex, touch receptors, and emotional centers become heightened. This goes back to what I was saying before. There was a period last year when I was making content for my channel where I pretended to be blind. And the purpose of this was really a um, exercise to really hone into things like the hearing sensories. But if we are only focused on the surface level, we miss a lot of other important details, such as tone. Did it come across in an angry tone? Was it in a relaxed tone? Was it a peaceful tone? So tone has a whole lot to do with this. When we take away the vision and we start to heighten the audio, we start to pick up on things that we've been missing for a very long time, to be honest. Uh, so in that journal of 2017, the audio cortex, touch receptors, and emotional centers become heightened. This means a whisper, a breath, or a touch becomes 3 to 5 times stronger. Think about that for just a minute. 3 to 5 times stronger. Whispers, touches, and just a soft breath. That is amazing. So 3 to 5 times stronger just because you took away a visual sensory input. In 2014, Psychological Science, people remember experiences with reduced sensory input more vividly because the imagination fills in the missing pieces, making the memory more self created. This is why our original concept worked. This is why your original concept worked, meaning to take away one of her senses. The feminine is activated by mystery, story, and anticipation, not guessing games, not confusion, but delayed reveal. The feminine aspect is creative, intuitive, emotional, and becomes activated when there is a safe mystery. There is space to imagine. There is a story instead of a script. There is a feeling of discovery rather than pressure. This is why imagination is powerful, more powerful than looks, because mystery bypasses the physical and goes directly to the emotional, nervous system. When we think about emotions and we link them to the idea that emotions are energy, this is how we unlock the understanding of magnetism and we unlock the understanding of polarity. We start to understand that the masculine and feminine aspects have their own polarity. And for any of you out there that may not know this, the human body is made up of multiple magnetic fields. It's already been proven through science that the heart produces the largest magnetic field in the body, followed by the brain. But even our eyes have a magnetic field. If you ever see like floaters, now some people will just say these are just simple floaters. We can easily explain this, but you can have such a shift in your energy that it changes your perception. You can see things that were not there before, like human auras. And if you see an aura, it is a form of light. We look into the sun, right? Some people never even lift their heads and look into the sky. But after 3 years of practicing sun gazing, I can tell you that the color of the sun that I used to think it was, I used to think the sun was orange. But once you start to practice and you can start to gaze directly into the sun, you find out it is not orange at all. The hues around the sun in the sky may be orange, and that is the mixture of the different gases, the fractal of the moisture in the air, and the light hitting the water particles causes light to disperse, just like a prism. So there are multiple magnetic fields. Magnetism, again, is the law of attraction because magnets either attract or they repel, and opposites they teach us lessons. Why is this such a repelling event? The push and pull dynamics that people can experience in relationships, where one person is pushing another person away when they really want that person, or they are trying to pull that person in, and the person they're trying to pull in is trying to pull away instead of allowing the attraction to happen open and honestly and psychologically. You know, in the modern times of things, I don't know from a woman's perspective because I don't have a lot of context other than my personal experience. But in the psychological things, a lot of people try to play mind games. They try to trick somebody mentally or psychologically, get inside someone's head. There are some people who intentionally use those push and pull dynamics. Reverse psychology, for example. Sometimes, through my research, I found that people say it is healthy at times to use reverse psychology on younger people in order to get them to do something that's actually positive. But on the other hand, reverse psychology, I think, is a slippery slope into a delusional self. If you go around and you use reverse psychology on everyone that you know and everyone that you meet, what's going to happen at some point in your life? When you've been using this reverse psychology and all of a sudden you try to be honest, you're going to flip that magnetism on his head and you're going to push everyone away from you because now, for the first time, you're being brutally honest. And instead of attracting people through reverse psychology, now you are repelling people by being honest. And that is really revealing to the inversion of reality. So if we are going backwards mentally and we're using reverse psychology and we are telling people we don't want things that we really do want, it becomes a confusion factor. And we can become really diluted, really delusional. And that was something that I had wrote in that story. We are going to break this delusion of yourself that you are anything except beautiful because you are. And the moment that she feels beautiful, the moment that she feels attractive, she does not need validation from anyone else to allow herself to feel her own energy in her body. As much as man tries to tell a woman she's beautiful, use his pickup lines. Hey, girl, you're so beautiful. You know, does that answer her inner questions, her inner fears? Does it really strike at the heart of what she is feeling internally? If she can't feel that for herself, she might seek validation in the outside. I only know this because even as a man, male people do this as well. Am I good enough? I need someone to tell me. I also learned through the ancient anxious avoidant attachment style that a lot of times people who have like really high scores on that scale often wish that people could read their minds because the thought of speaking out what they really feel in their mind is too overwhelming to the point that they lock up and they don't speak. I know this because I once was just like that. The fear of rejection overrides the brain and shuts down the body, and then you need someone to read your mind. And then once they read your mind, then the fantasy can play out, but then you don't take action, so it stays a daydream, it stays a fantasy. So for me, creating this story and actually posting it was not for validation, it was self expression and self liberation. Very interesting. So, attraction isn't visual, it's neurological. Is what I'm trying to say. Women are often told they're emotional or complicated. Science says they are neurologically built differently. In 2020, a Harvard MRI study showed that the limbic system, emotion plus imagination center, activates more intensely during fantasized or anticipated experiences during visual stimulation. And I'm getting hit with chills as I'm reading this. So, how this translate is a woman becomes more attracted by your voice, your confidence, your presence, and your ability to guide an emotional moment. Your ability to make her imagine something, not by what you look like. This is why the blindfold exercise works so well. It is bypassing the physical form and speaking directly to the part of her that feels. Magnetism, the part of her that feels. Thoughts are electric, feelings are magnetic. So, guys and ladies, Anchor the Feeling. This is a shirt that you can buy off of my store, and I just recently released a hoodie that has a very similar theme on it. Anchor the Feeling. It's got a front and a back design on it. Hypnowaves.com is my store, and I will be putting a coupon in this video for Black Friday. But it really is very symbolic. Let me break this down. I've talked about it before, and I want to do this briefly. Anchor the Feeling in the psychological world of things, in the hypnosis department of things, there is a technique called the hypnotic anchor. And this is where we can create parts, a symbol or some form of hypnosis effect where we can anchor our feelings. You think about somebody who has PTSD, they can have a trigger point that causes them to have a episode where they relive something that they've experienced. So the hypnotic anchor is creating something new. Now for me, I'll give you an example, one of mine. That is the sunlight because sunlight gives us serotonin, which is a form of mood stabilization, but serotonin is one of the four major hormones. So just by association, when I think about the sunlight, I immediately get a feeling of calmness, being more stabilized, and a overwhelming wellness feeling. So for me, that is a form of a hypnotic anchor. Sunlight. You can create any type of short symbol or anything that you can associate with that anytime you think of it, it automatically helps you to rebalance your energy and to find peace within your body. I found it to be very helpful and very life changing for me to not just learn about these practices, but make videos about them and to share with my audience out there different things that in hopes that it helps someone find more peace in their life, more happiness, and even, to discover things that maybe were mysteries to them, how this works or how that works. I'm a very hands on type person. I love to take things apart and see how it works for myself, but I also enjoy teaching and I enjoy learning. So that is a mindset that I've always had. So attraction is not always visual. It is something that revolves around the magnetism of feelings. Imagination creates bonding chemicals. In 2016, Oxford study on social bonding imagined emotional experiences releases oxytocin and dopamine without physical touch. Now, oxytocin is known as the love hormone or the bonding hormone, and dopamine is that little feel good rush that we get from happy experiences. It is a quick burst of feel good, but it also needs time to rebuild itself in the body. So sometimes you've heard the terminology before, dopamine detox. And it is definitely one of those things like any addiction, right? You hear people talk about um, certain drugs that when you first take it, you get this extreme high, but over time you have to take more and more and more and more to get that same high. And that is because of the chemical imbalance within the body. So keeping a balanced hormonal makeup within the body is very important. Meditation helps with this. Just a few minutes a day of blocking out the world around you and just sitting silent, allowing yourself to just breathe. And I will tell you something else. The air is a static charge. There is electricity in the air. So when we are breathing, we are also oxygenating the body. We are also creating a electrical charge in the body, and we are allowing our emotions to start to balance themselves out. And by doing so, we help our hormonal cycles balance more evenly. If you speak to her imagination, if you give her an experience inside of her own mind, her body releases the same chemicals as if it actually happened. This is why imagination is the doorway to connection, trust, emotional arousal, and attraction. A man can activate her imagination, activates her entire nervous system. Men, let me read that again. A man who can activate her imagination activates her entire nervous system. Synchronicity. Think about this for just a minute. Ignite her imagination. You set her imagination on fire in a good way, not in a bad way. But now the wheels are turning. Now that story is starting to have a life of its own within her mind. So, lastly, let's really get into a few more points before we close out this video. Why the blindfold example works so well. Your original fantasy concept was brilliant because it naturally does five things. Creates safety. She knows she's not being watched. The mind relaxes. Reduces performance pressure. She doesn't need to look a certain way, she can simply feel. Now, this goes back to what I was saying earlier. To break that disillusion of her that she is anything but attractive and beautiful, because she can look in the mirror and she can have her own self doubts. She can have her own um, inner lack of confidence, but to put that blindfold on her and to allow her to give herself permission to feel is very important. And she doesn't have to perform. This is very important, guys, because in the modern age, and yes, porn's been around for many, many years, but in the modern age, it's so easy to just Google and you can find porn. Many women feel pressure that they need to perform, that they need to do the things that porn stars do in order to be attractive, in order to be this or in order to be that. But the truth of the matter is that if she feels attractive within her own body, within her own imagination, and her own emotional energy, she doesn't need to perform because what's going to happen is natural. It is sex is natural. So the need for performance melts away and it becomes a natural flow of energy between two people. It shifts the focus inward, imagination takes over. It heightens the moment, and every sensation becomes more intense. It allows the feminine to breathe. She is reacting, she is receiving. This is why women respond deeply to words, tones, emotional pacing, and presence. Masculine feminine polarity. I spoke about this briefly earlier. You can even tie this energetic polarity. The masculine provides direction, structure, and presence. The feminine responds to emotion, mystery, and subtlety. When a man speaks to a woman's imagination, he is not performing, he is guiding. That shifts the polarity instantly. It awakens attraction without physical touch. Attraction built on imagination lasts longer. Looks fade into the background within weeks, but imagination based attraction becomes long term, emotional, memorable, neurologically reinforced, and associated with safety and excitement. If a woman feels that she can be emotionally safe to express herself, she feels like she can be open with her desires and she will not be judged for her desires. She will not be rejected because she openly admitted that she has certain desires. She feels safe. This is why women fall harder for men who can stimulate her mind, not her eyes. Guys, for what it's worth, being able to be a strong masculine man who can tap into that feminine aspect within himself is more capable of speaking to the feminine within a woman and allows her to put her guard down. You don't have to do this by force. You don't have to do this by coercion. And you don't have to do this by trying to convince a woman to have sex with you or to even be attracted to you. It is said that um, the sexual energy itself speaks for itself. So arousal of life oftentimes is a inward expression being pushed outwardly. If she can't feel safe emotionally, if she can't feel safe expressing her feelings, then how can she feel safe sharing the vision of her imagination, sharing a fantasy that she wants to experience before she dies? I know that sounds kind of weird to say, but it's true. There are things that we all as humans wish to experience at least one time in our lives. I'm sure that if you sit around and think about it, everyone can come up with at least one thing that is like a bucket list item that they wish that they could experience. And that is what this really speaks to. It speaks to the feelings, it speaks to the imagination, and it speaks to being able to express yourself. Now, a lot of women have these fantasies of being dominated. And even as a man myself that wrote about these type dynamics, we also live in a society where the ideology of feminism does exist. So a lot of men get this weird twisted delusion that if I am too um dominating, I'm going to get rejected and then I'm going to be called a toxic man. Then you know, I'm going to be ostracized for this and that. But there is a way that this has to unfold in order for it to make her feel safe, in order for you to be able to put a blindfold on her and for her to trust you with taking away one of her senses. If you can speak to the emotions within her, if you can narrate the story, share the vision with her, then the magi within imagination comes to life. It magnifies, it magnetizes, and two people can have an experience without the attachment syndromes, push and pull dynamics, runner and chaser dynamics, all these different dynamics that play out in different relationships. And I'm not talking about go around and just be sexually open to like no strings attached. That's not what I'm saying at all. But to be able to have companionship with someone, a shared experience with someone, be able to be open and honest with each other in a way that is mutually beneficial, that both people are giving and receiving in that type context, is very healthy and very important to acknowledge. Now, for a man like myself who practices semen retention, I'm not going to be doing that forever. But I will tell you, it has taught me some invaluable lessons that I have openly shared on this channel to rid myself of lustful thought patterns, for example. Yes, I am a very visual person. Most men are. Even women are visually attracted by appearance. But appearance alone doesn't create magnetism because you can have lustful ways, which is a form of delusion. Oh, that girl could be hot, but she could also be a psycho. And speaking of psycho, I've talked about psychics before. Psychology is really like, it's so crazy when we think about how words on surface levels mean something to us. But then, if you, on a mainstream sense, people pick at people who are psychics because they're not really reading your mind. They are actually reading other signals that are coming from you that you are not aware of. And what I mean is, take it back to taking away the vision for just a minute, heighten the audio. And now, because there is heightened audio, you are more in tune with the tone. You are more in tune with other aspects, and the tone carries information also. So if we can do that, it may appear to someone who's more unaware that you are somewhat psychic. But psychology here is what is really at play. Understanding the human psyche is what it is all about. Now, you can have all this information and all this knowledge, but there's something that is very important to remember as I close this video out, and that is intention. Intention really matters. Around the time that I wrote this, I had a very supernatural experience. And if you go all the way back to the beginning of my channel, actually, you can find the video where I spoke about it. Felt like I was talking to my father, not my biological father, but the father who was in heaven. And it's so strange to bring that up in a video about sex. But the father aspect of this, being the male or the mind, was very enlightening because when you look at intentions, does it help someone else or is it something that would harm someone else? Very basic rules, right? When we look at computer logic and how we program computers, command lines are binary code, ones and zeros. So when we look at human behavior and when you awaken that psyche within yourself, to me, I experienced what that was, and it was in the form of intention. How am I going to move based upon intention? Is what I'm doing beneficial to the other person, regardless of sex? We could throw that out the window for just a minute. Are my actions kind to another person? Am I helping to provide benefit to another person? Or are my actions taken away from another person's life experience? Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Very, very simple. And once I started to do that, my life started to shift in ways that I could not have imagined beforehand. So if your intentions are well intended, then you will go a lot farther in life than you ever would by trying to use reverse psychology, trying to use mind tricks on women, trying to play mental games, and to try to get all in her head and make her fall in love with you. Because at the end of the day, what is going to happen is you are going to put that spell over yourself. You are going to tell yourself that she's so in love with me because you've been using reverse psychology. And when she wakes up to the fact that you've been doing that, she's going to hit the road running, and you are going to be left with the confusion that you tried to put over her because of that same feminine aspect within a man as when we look at a woman and call her a feminine. Very deep stuff, guys, when you stop and think about it. Thanksgiving is this week, and I hope you all have a very wonderful Thanksgiving. And I do appreciate you sticking around for as long as you did. My name is Nick, and this has been Hypnovision Studios. I hope you all have a great holiday, and I'll see you on the next one.